Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to First Congregational Church's online service. My name is Tom, and I'm the pastor of this church in downtown Langsburg. We're a small church in a small town looking to spread some hope and help and healing out in the world. Now, if you've been tuning in to our online services, you'll notice a change in flavor today. We're changing some things up for the summer months, but don't worry, this online venue is not going anywhere. We're definitely here to stay. You may notice that we follow the liturgical calendar around here, and we have modernized our liturgy with a bit of some modern day poets and things. But the liturgical calendar is divided into two main sections, Kairos time and ordinary time. Kairos time means the Lord's time, and we theologically traverse the life of Christ from Advent promise through Christmas, Epiphany, Lent, Holy Week, Easter, and then we end with Pentecost, which was last week. The rest of the year is ordinary time and follows the life of the people of God. Today is the first Sunday in ordinary time, Trinity Sunday. That's a day dedicated to one of the two historical and central dogmas of the church, God existing as Trinity. The other is the incarnation of God in the human person, Jesus of Nazareth. Now, if you hear the word dogma and you have all the alarms going off in your head, just hang on and you'll see where we go with that. I was once asked by someone outside of a liturgical context, what happens if what you think God has given you to speak falls outside of what is on your liturgical calendar? And I just told the person it really doesn't ever happen. You see, I learn things through this text that I share with everybody, and then I submit myself to this calendar and schedule. However, the question itself reveals a flaw of authoritarianism that believes the pastor has this direct line of communication with God for the sake of the people. And then whatever the pastor is all hot and bothered about on any given Sunday is what you're going to hear the pastor ranting about from the front in the pulpit, and then claiming it as God's perspective on whatever hot topic is on the table. Now, the liturgical calendar, however, is centered around the pattern of Christ's life of self-sacrificial love, from the promise of Advent all the way through to the empowerment of Pentecost. Then for the second half of the year, it focuses on the people of God living that out in the world through ordinary time. It's a humbling process that keeps us focused on things greater than the cultural hot topics of our day. Not in order to dodge these topics altogether, but to see how the pattern of Christ's life can inform them instead of the other way around. So let's dive into ordinary time today and learn about this thing called the Trinity.
Poured into our hearts a blessing for Trinity Sunday. Like a cup, like a chalice, like a basin, like a bowl. When the Spirit comes, let it find our heart like this, shaped like something that knows how to receive what is given, that knows how to hold what comes to fill, that knows how to gather itself around what arrives as unbidden, unsought, unmeasured love. By Jan Richardson.
We don't talk about Bruno. No. Giordano Bruno, that is. Why? Well, spoiler, in 1600, the church burned him at the stake for a heresy that turned out to be scientifically true. He took Copernicus's ideas to their logical end, saying that there was no center of the universe, it was infinite, and each star was possibly a distant sun with planets orbiting around them, and maybe even possible life forms on them. Not bad for a 16th century monk. See, we live in an age where much of the magic of the past has now been explained by modern science. Rain is not God's blessing us with favorable crops from heaven, but the buildup of condensation in the sky to its maximum before it lets loose. It might sound like a loss of something, like a kid who no longer believes in the tooth fairy, but we also don't burn people at the stake for witchcraft, for inventing and explaining cool stuff. Worth the trade, in my opinion. But the mindset of declaring folks heretical for lack of mental conformity is still alive and well. One mistake of the modern Western church in the scientific age is to try and categorize and systematize the Bible into a scientific list of all that can be known about God, humankind, the world, and meaning. Then we call this framework reality and demand mental conformity to the boxes that we ourselves created. Then we toss out or dismiss anything or anybody that does not fit inside the theological frameworks we made. We place an adjective of biblical in front of any topic covered in the boxes, like here's the biblical way of managing your finances, or this is how to have a biblical marriage, or here's the biblical way to raise your children. Well, guess what? Capitalism didn't exist then, so there is no biblical way to manage your modern day finances. The Bible doesn't talk about it. And families are drastically different too, so taking Ephesians 5 as a model for biblical families is just not going to work. Sorry, Dean Dobson. Maybe you grew up in a tradition that demanded you sign a doctrinal statement 3 miles long if you wanted to belong, and then follow the biblical way of doing all the stuff that they thought was important. And then you were exiled for asking tough and honest questions. There's a movement of younger people walking away from religion altogether, frankly because they just can't abandon intellectual honesty. They have real questions and desire honest conversations around these questions. The world has changed a whole lot over the past 100 years and continues to change at rates faster than I can keep track of. So providing a hospitable space for authentic conversation is essential moving forward. Now, Jesus actually creates this space in our passage from today out of John 16. He said, I have much more to say to you, more than you can now bear. But when the Spirit of truth comes, they will guide you into all truth. I think that to assume that we have the biblical understanding of all things hot topic in our present day is a perennial challenge. If you think about it, it took a few hundred years of theological wrestling to produce the understanding of the Trinity that Christians now hold. Maybe the disciples didn't think it was going to happen that way or to even take that long to get somewhere. And maybe we want answers to the hard questions of our day, like immediately as well. Let's be patient while the Spirit leads us into truths that might take lifetimes to reveal. But the reverse danger here is to slow down the work God is actually up to by silencing those God speaks through. So let's understand that God often leads from the vulnerable margins, not the zealous, violent fringes or the centralized status quo powers, both whom colluded to crucify Christ, by the way. We must let those vulnerable on the margins speak and lead us into truth. Perhaps it takes so long for God to guide us because of our stubbornness to listen to these voices in the first place. So if we slow down and listen for the Spirit of God speaking among us today, we might actually speed up where we're headed. The word unorthodox means departure from the normal, usual, traditional, and accepted. And then the word orthodox is defined as conforming to what is generally or traditionally accepted as right or true, established, and approved. Some unorthodox science beliefs eventually became mainstream, like the sun being the center of the universe, or microscopic organisms like bacteria and viruses can make you sick. Time tested these beliefs and they endured. Other orthodox beliefs were discarded, like bleeding patients who were sick as a way of getting rid of their, quote, bad blood. Sorry, George Washington. There's a battle between conserving and progressing that is very tangible at all points in human history. We can all feel this tension in our bones when we get all nostalgic towards a time when we were more naive about the complexity of life. We want to go back to, quote, the good old days, when things were as they ought to be. Well, the problem is that moment is different for everybody. And since nostalgia is steeped in naivety, we often don't see the abuses of the time that we want to go back to. We might look fondly back on the 19th century, mid-19th century, and then long to return, but people of color who fought for their lives and freedom and civil rights don't. It was a brutal and violent time for them. We might look fondly back on the 1800s and their pioneer spirit, but the indigenous people who endured colonization, division of their families, and genocide don't. You see, we don't long for the time itself, but the state of naivety. When we think about orthodoxy within a religious context, we can make the mistake of a kind of theological nostalgia. It feels different because we believe that God made things in a state of perfection that needs to be conserved. I've heard some say, if we can just get back to the way things were in the book of Acts, the church would be so much better. But then we forget that they just sold everything they had and shared with everything and everybody in common with each other. Ain't many who want to sell their houses and move on to commune nowadays, I don't think. We think we've already discovered theological reality, and any change or progression is perceived as a threat until it's not. Sorry, Bruno, and sorry, Galileo. Is God done speaking? Is God done leading or developing us as a human race? No, of course not. The doctrine of the Trinity tells us that God is not a static reality to be comprehended and grasped, but a relationship to be experienced and to be known. The theology of the Trinity is often communicated as one God in three persons, and we usually use this symbol of a triangle emphasizing the points and personalities. But much of the reality of the Trinity is contained within the space between the points, and not the mere definitions of the characters at the points of the triangle. Jesus continues in our passage saying, "The Spirit will not speak on their own. They will speak only what they hear, and will tell you what is yet to come. The Spirit will glorify me, because it is from me that they will receive what they will make known to you. All that belongs to the Father is mine." The Trinity is the relationship that God is, a flow of self-giving love and receiving of that love without reservation. See, the Spirit sends glory to Christ, who sends wisdom to the Spirit. Orthodoxy is not a return to that which was perfect, but then broken through progress. It's not properly ordered knowledge. Orthodoxy is properly ordered love. The Trinity gives all to one another and receives all from one another. The flow of love is not hindered by selfishness, which receives without giving, or false humility, which gives without receiving. Where are we in this divine outpouring of love? Well, we are the body of Christ, filled with the Spirit of God, set in right relationship to the Creator. The Trinity engulfs us in the relational flow of God's love. It's not necessarily about right definitions, but right relations and ordered loves. So then, what is orthodoxy? Now, if you've ever had to go to an orthodontist or an orthopedic specialist, you know they specialize in making things straight and correct. Maybe unaligned teeth or broken bone. We need them because when things are not aligned properly, it can cause some serious problems. An unset bone out of alignment can cause serious pain. If you notice, the front prefix of both of these professions start with the same word, ortho, which is actually a Greek word which means to make straight. Straight teeth, straight bones. And orthodoxy has this same prefix on it. So it's straight what? We can break down this word into two. Ortho, which we already know means to make straight and aligned, and doxy, which is actually the Greek word doxa and means worship, glory, praise. So orthodoxy is not properly ordered doctrinal statements or knowledge or understanding, but properly ordered love. This makes sense because the Trinity is a perfect relationship of love. So to be aligned with this God, we must be aligned with the nature of this God. If our loves are misaligned, it can cause a lot of pain, much like a misaligned bone. Now, if I love pizza more than I love my health, it creates practices of eating pizza in excess at the expense of my health that then cause my body to break down and not function properly. A misaligned love causes pain. The writers of the creeds and confessions wanted to align their worship, that is, their inner awe of their hearts. So they sought to put words to the great mystery of the Trinity and of God, not to create containers to hold facts, but to create conduits that aim our affections. As Mike Morel and Richard Rohr say in their book, The Divine Dance, we must maintain a fundamental humility before the great mystery. If we do not, religion always worships itself and its formulations, and never God. Now, to say that you're to love God more than anything or anybody else is a tricky statement. While it sounds great on the exterior, it is very abstract. So we end up defining God as a doctrine that needs to then be defended from that over there, or a community that needs to be protected from them out there. And loving God then turns into a weapon used against others. John later tells us in his letter, if you claim to love God, whom you can't see, but do not love your neighbor who you can see, you are false. You see, we love God by loving our neighbor. Those authors from the Divine Dance go on to say, knowing without loving is frankly dangerous for the soul and for society. You'll critique most everything you encounter, and even have the hubris to call this model of reflexive cynicism thinking, whereas it's really your ego's narcissistic reaction to the moment. You'll position things too quickly as inferior or superior, with me or against me. And most of the time, you'll be wrong. Ouch. When faith turns violent, manipulative, oppressive, or abusive, we have utterly abandoned the faith and baptized it in the world's values. And then we just call it biblical values with fancy religious vocabulary. And it's deadly. And it's killing the modern day church. And young people are walking away from it in record-setting numbers. So what do? It is essential to our orthodoxy that we learn to love well, even to the point of loving our enemies. And for this, we can turn to Martin Luther King Jr. for modern wisdom and direction. He said, through violence, you may murder the hater, but you do not murder hate. In fact, violence merely increases hate. So it goes. Returning violence for violence multiplies violence, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. The beauty of nonviolence is that in its own way and in its own time, it seeks to break the chain reaction of evil. And this is how God heals the world, through the power of love. May it be so.
Trinity blessing. May God, who comes to us in the things of this world, bless your eyes and be in your seeing. May Christ, who looks upon you with deepest love, bless your eyes and widen your gaze. May the Spirit, who perceives what is and what may yet be, bless your eyes and sharpen your vision. May the sacred three bless your eyes and cause you to see. By Jan Richardson.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today online in this digital space, and I hope that you found some hope and help and healing. Stay tuned for some fun blooper reels following this recording, because I'm not perfect and I mess up a whole lot, and then I get to laugh at myself afterwards. So please join me on the other side of this for that. It's a whole lot of fun. And if you found this service helpful and identify with the spirit of the teaching here, there are some ways to help partner with us. You can like our page on Facebook or Instagram to stay tuned to our online services that release every Sunday, as well as see them in a breakdown format into smaller videos throughout the week on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You can look for those releases then. You can also subscribe on YouTube if you want to see an early release of these videos, because I upload them on Friday. And if you leave any comments below these posts, it actually helps others find us by triggering some unseen internet algorithms. So please feel free to say hi down there. If you're in exile from the faith community and you have not found a spiritual home yet and you are looking for one, you can join us here in whatever capacity you can. You can belong with us because we are covenantal and not creedal. So we do not ask you to conform to some long doctrinal statements that your intellect might have a problem with. So if you find yourself in a dark night of the soul or a deconstruction process, you need a little help, we actually offer one-on-one spiritual direction as well with me, trained spiritual director. Just reach out on our website, www.fcclangsburg.com, and I can actually guide you through the dark, because I've been there. And if you'd like to partner with us financially, we'd appreciate any level of giving you are able. They help keep these services going. You can give online at the website found on the bottom of your screen. So thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you throughout the week and again on Sunday. Blessings on the journey. Something that speaks, no. He took Copernicus's idea. Copernicus's. What'd you see, puppy? Or a biblical way to raise your children. It's a loud plane. Oh, land. Should I just start all over? No, that was too much stuff. Too much good stuff. Okay. We might look backly. Just reach out on our website, www.facebook. No. That was a long one. Hope it's not long to listen to.